Discussions of science that we see in the daily newspaper or on television, what little attention television pays to science, is it more ideological, political, or more scientific?
Yeah. Well, this distresses me because there are certain areas of science, and science journalists do a reasonable job, but there are certain areas of science which are mired in ideological and political issues. I mean, climate change is the obvious one. And when you see this happening, it distresses me enormously because there isn't a focus on what the science is telling you. There's a focus on an ideology which doesn't like those sorts of results. So, for example, let's take climate change. Now, if the climate is warming considerably and human activity is contributing to it, and the vast majority of experts in this area think that is the case, then what you have to do to be able to deal with that is have worldwide concerted action. And a consequence of that is that there's restrictions on nations and on companies and on individuals which some of a particular political hue simply don't like. And they don't like the fact that it may slow down economic growth, and sometimes they think about developing nations and slowing down their economic growth. But instead of arguing those sorts of arguments, which we have to work our way through, many of them now start attacking the science itself in ridiculous ways. I've never seen so many absurd arguments that you can get from some of those who call themselves climate skeptics, but are seldom skeptical themselves of what they are saying. What we need to do is get the science right, and that means listening to the majority of experts in the area, and then work out the consequences. Don't be arrogant and think that you can just overturn the scientific evidence and the scientific arguing in the same way as you could do in a school debating chamber, because you cannot do that. And it's really quite wrong to do that.
We've raised climate change.
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal, no reason particularly why you have said this, or would have seen this, but by Lamar Smith. He's a powerful man in the United States Congress. He chairs the subcommittee on science. It's headlined, it's opinion commentators, the climate change religion.
Yeah.
But I want to bounce two things that he said. I think people are confused about climate change. They're confused about science and climate change. So, for example, he says, given that for the past decade and a half, global temperature increases have been negligible, and that the worsening storm scenario has been widely debunked, the pronouncements from the Obama administration, but he means basically those who argue about climate change, sound more like scare tactics than fact-based declarations. Does he have a point? Is this talk about climate change primarily scare tactics?
Well, why doesn't he listen to the two greatest science academies in the world, which is the National Academy of Sciences in the United States and the Royal Society, which invented modern science, of which I'm president at this present time, who have both done major studies into this area, reasonable, rational studies. And they would disagree with both of those things that he said.
Based on their science,
based on
their
the
research.
evidence, based on the logic. The point about the last 15 years, and remember, I'm not a climate scientist, all I do is listen to the experts, is that the time scale he's chosen to point out there, is one that just happens to favour his argument. If he goes back 20 years, it's a different answer. When he talks about, for example, extreme weather, if the temperature of the planet, of the atmosphere, is rising, the possibility of more intense weather will go up because it can absorb more water vapour. It's just simple physics. I'm afraid he doesn't know what he's talking about. I repeat, even look at the headline there. Read the headline out again.
The climate change religion.
What that is implying is the tactics of the lobbyists. Listen to the vast majority of experts and they will disagree with what he says.
But the counter-argument, and we're not going to go through the whole argument, but the counter-argument to that is, those who deny this, their argument is, they are frequently in error but never in doubt.
Well, let me put it another way. If you were ill, if you had a cancer, and you went to the hospital, and you looked for treatment, would you take the treatment that is supported by the great majority of clinician scientists who recommend a certain treatment, or would you listen to the treatment by a few standing on the sidelines who are often political, often commentators in the press, what would you do?
Well, the answer speaks for itself.
Of course, and it's the same logic here. Let's get the science right, then you can have the politics. Don't mix the politics and the ideology up with the science, and that's exactly what's happening in that article.
I understand your hope. I'm not sure that it's a realistic hope.
Of course not, but I have to say what I think's right.
Exactly.